President Trump arrived this afternoon in Warsaw. The president looking to reassure our NATO allies, especially among them Poland, meeting with the leaders of Poland and Croatia tomorrow. He'll be delivering a speech in Krasinski Square. He then goes on to Hamburg for the G20 meeting, where he will be face-to-face with Vladimir Putin Friday. That's his first meeting with the Russian leader. Well, our next guest says President Trump needs to make clear at the G20 that anyone doing business with North Korea or Iran can't do any business in the United States. Joining us tonight, retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, the host of War Stories. He was the U.S. government's counterterrorism coordinator for President Ronald Reagan. And, Colonel, great to have you with us.
Lou, it's good to be with you.
This is a peculiar paradox, if you will. The president in Germany, where he will meet with Vladimir Putin, as his efforts with China obviously have been fruitless, and North Korea is proceeding apace with the support of the Chinese instead of their opposition. What is he to do?
Well, look, there are a number of options available, but some of the important aspects of this is we really are paying the price for 8 years of flaccid response to existential threats. The Obama policy on nuclear proliferation was, well, if we disarm, everyone else will. That's typical fatally flawed Pacific hogwash. The nuclear weapons and the ICBMs that North Korea has been testing don't have to be all that accurate. If it's an electromagnetic pulse burst at the right altitude, it's going to shut off electricity anywhere in the footprint, the line of sight from that detonation on the ground, the curvature of the Earth. It will shut it down for years to come. That means all of Japan. It means all of South Korea. Or it means all of Canada, at least the western part of it. It's time for some, if you will, a hard-nosed reality check. The nuke weapons and ICBM programs in the communist country of North Korea and Iran have been joined at the hip since the Clinton administration. Number two, in the 2 years since the sanctions on Iran were lifted, and we airdropped $1.8 billion in cash on Tehran, the North Koreans have conducted more ICBM tests than in the previous 2 decades. I wonder who's paying for them. Of course, it's the Iranians.
Yeah, we know that it is China, as you say. We know also that Clinton and Bush and Obama were, at the very best, irresponsible in their handling of the North Korean policy and their response to the provocations and the development of nuclear weapons and their missile program.
So now, here's our options.
I'm sorry?
There are options. Like, first, at the G20 summit, the president needs to tell all those gathered there that any company doing any business whatsoever with the DPRK and
Colonel,
Iran
if I may say,
can't do business with us.
We've played at sanctions in this country for a very long time. They have not worked against Iran. They have not worked against Russia. They have not worked against North Korea, that has suffered sanctions for 20 years.
Understood.
And now let's go to you talked about a reality check.
Okay.
Let's get to the reality. What can this country do militarily and while assuring national security and the safety of American citizens, stop the North Korean program?
He's going to have a meeting with Japanese Prime Minister Abe, okay? He needs to be told that the United States is going to support a change in the Japanese Constitution written by Douglas MacArthur, that Article 9 does not require them not to acquire nuclear weapons, and the Japanese may step up to the plate. Number two, President Xi Jinping needs to be told it's time for a regime change in Pyongyang. They can keep all the rest of this stuff, but drop this guy and they'll drop the nuclear weapons. Number three, tell the Republic of Korea, President Moon, that we need full THAAD deployment and a return of the U.S. tactical nukes that were there from the 60s all the way through 1991. By the way, that was the first President, George Bush. And lastly, if that doesn't work, we have enough conventional ordnance to turn North Korea into an overdone Pop-Tart.
Well, the latter is, you know, I think
it ought to be the last option.
It's interesting, but I at the same time know that the North Koreans have sufficient ordnance and artillery and rockets to turn a good part of northern South Korea, below the DMZ, into a no-man's land for quite some time with their conventional weaponry, let alone their nuclear weapons, which we don't really know the extent of.
and their chemical weapons, because they're not participating in any of those previous sanction regimes. Look, the fact is they've got well enough artillery pieces to deal very harshly with Seoul, which is only 35 miles from the DMZ. The firing off of those 2 rockets that were put up on the news by, I guess, our Pentagon and the South Korean defense universe, such as it is, totally ineffective at convincing the North to do anything different. Yeah. What will make a difference are those kinds of things I talked about. THAAD going in its full batteries, and President Moon's got to be told, look, we need that to defend you, which is what you want us to do, and we need that to defend our own troops that are on the ground.
In the short term, what I hear you saying is Kim Jong-un has us exactly where he wants us.
Not yet. I think what Kim Jong-un wants most of all is to have the regime survive so that his grandchildren can take over like he did from his father and grandfather. But the bottom line of it is he cannot continue to have nuclear weapons. And the nice speeches at the UN aren't going to stop it. A unilateral sanctions regime that says you can't do business with us if you do any business with them can't
Colonel,
work.
I'm a fellow who no longer believes anybody in this country when they tell us what other people in other countries cannot do, can no longer do, will not do, because we are barely in control of our own nation. And that is very disturbing to me, and I think to most members of this audience. We've seen enough, we've heard enough. It sounds a lot like talk and not much like walk.